Good morning or good afternoon, whatever the time may be that you're going to be watching this. I want to first and foremost say thank you. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to watch the video. I know that it shows on the, as of right now, 250 views of the last video that we did of why people do not attend church. For this video, we're going to be going over some of the comments that was made of why people are not attending church. Now, after this video, we're going to be continuing over with other devotions, other things from my heart. But for this, I want to address some of the comments that was made on this subject. So the first comment that we're going to be going over is, it says, churches in the U.S. cover up rapists, wife beaters, and child abusers. So the reason why that they're not going to church is the people in that church are committing horrible crimes. Now, I said that specifically that they are crimes. It's more of a criminal aspect in this statement that was read as far as the issues that is covered here. Rapists, that is against the law. It is against the law to force yourself on another. So that would be something that would be outside of the norm for the church to go over. Wife beaters, of course, domestic violence that you're dealing with within the home, that would be more of the cops may need to be involved, especially if it's a continual thing. There may need to be more of a separation there for both sides. For child abusers as well. Now, people that abuse children, people that physically assault children, the innocent, the ones that can't fight back. Now, as far as the scripturally, as far as church discipline, that's for sins such as like lying, thoughts of sin, different reactions. You know, if you went somewhere and had a drink or something like this. But these three are really centered towards criminal activity. So this would be more of, outreach into something other. But as far as biblical, if we're going to be addressing how you would work with somebody that is in sin in the church, and in that aspect, that is addressed in Scripture. That is addressed in Scripture in Matthew chapter 18. It starts with verse 15. So verse 15 says, "If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone." So if there is sin there, you go to the individual person itself. Somebody that's done something wrong, you go to that person and you talk one-on-one. What if that person doesn't hear you? Well, it goes to number 2. It goes to, if he listens to you, you have gained your brother. But if he does not listen, so this is if he doesn't listen, verse 16, "Take 1 or 2 others along with you, that every charge may be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses." So you go with one-on-one, and if that doesn't work, you bring 2 or 3 other people specifically to be a witness. So you can say, well, I've talked to him about this. Well, this way you can have somebody that can see that you have indeed, in their reaction of turning away, saying, well, it's okay if I do this, and they kind of accept whatever sin that they're in at that moment. So what if one person doesn't do it, the one-on-one? What if 2 or 3 people doesn't do it? Then we get into the church getting involved. So if you notice this, the church has not got involved yet. So it's between one-on-one, 2 or 3-on-1, and now it comes before the church. So you see, if he refuses to listen to them, meaning the 3 people, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen even to the church, let him be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. Now, a Gentile in this instance is kind of like an unbeliever. Somebody that is outside of the church. That is, it's a shunning in a sense. It's like, well, you can't be in here with us. So go, you go out from among us, you kind of cast them away, because you don't, like, if you think of fruit in a sense, one fruit can build out and ruin the whole batch. If you've anybody that ever stored apples, for example, one bad apple, you get the sponginess of the one, you get the discoloration, rubs up against another, and it can cause problems. So you're separating it because you don't want it to linger and to make it worse. And a tax collector in this instance is somebody that was very, it was discarded because they worked for the Romans collecting their taxes. So tax collectors back in those days was seen as very vile people. So that is what church discipline is. 1-on-1, 2 or 3-on-1, and then finally the church. And then if they don't listen to the church, then you put them out. Now the reasons behind why they don't do it in churches now, sadly to say, is for the numbers. How many people attend the church? It can be, hundreds. Even some churches can even hold up 1,000 people. People that have income, that want to bring money into the church. Sometimes that is a reason why you don't want to address certain circumstances. So for numbers, for money, sadly, most problems get overlooked because it's not just one apple in the bunch. Sometimes it can grow into many different bad fruits throughout. And when you start actually taking a biblical stance, it can weed out a lot of people from the church. Now we do have a way of disciplining this, but sadly, some churches that do not do church discipline makes other churches look bad. So you are right in that function, but there is a way to address sin. But the three things that you address, that's more of a criminal aspect and not necessarily something that the church can handle directly. They can counsel in certain aspects, but if it's acts such as those things, some things that can lead to more of a criminal. So it has to, some instances need to go outside of the church. That's all I'm saying. So the next statement, or the next thing it says, is they're leaving the church but not the faith. And then it goes into a little bit more of a detail. It's about relationship with God and not a religion. Now, leaving a church and not the faith. Now, Scripture, it says, just going over what the Scripture directly says in regards to going to church, it says, not forsaking, this is Hebrews 10:25, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as the manner of some is. So not forsaking, but why not forsake? But exhorting one another, as so much more as you see the day approaching. Now, churches started off originally in people's homes. It started off when you would gather together and you would pray together, you'd worship together, you share the Scripture, the Bible at the time together. But as the church grew, so did the number of people. Now, the people's homes may hold, 5 or 6, maybe 10, 15, depending on the size of the home. But as the church begins to grow, there needs to be more of a place to put all of those people. So ultimately there was a church that was built or made in the area, and a lot of people can come together and do it. And it's just because of the sheer number. Now you can have smaller churches. When churches are being formed, they usually start off in homes. They meet and it slowly builds into another church. So in these instances, you don't really need a church if you want to have more of a one-on-one communication with God. You want to have a better, closer, relationship with them. Because some of the churches, and this is the highlight, exhorting one another as so much as you see the day approaching. When you gather together and worship, you are to exhort one another. You are to build up one another. So church gives that way of doing that among believers. So for the next one that was addressed is Let's see, let me just read over this just briefly, if you wouldn't mind. This is more of a fellowship, more of a one-on-one, discipleship making, and it talks about Bible or biblical teaching. So more of a building a discipleship, small group, trusted friends to share encouraging. So this is more of a discipling. And it is true in that aspect, because as the church grows, it's harder for that one-on-one. Now, a pastor for a small church, for example, that only deals with, say, 10, 15 people, those churches are easily able to be discipled. It's the small Bible studies that they can have. It's easy to get that many people together in a specific house or a specific location, and they can grow easily. But that number, as it changes, 500 people, it's hard to get that specific discipling. And for an example of this that I'm talking about, Jesus Christ himself pulled 12 disciples. He pulled specific people to minister to teach. The Sermon on the Mount, for example, he used. And he walked alongside his disciples and taught and preached and shown them how to live out the Christian life. So Jesus Christ himself understood the significance behind small groups. So that is why it's key important. So what he's saying, that, as far as the big churches, you don't have that, and you don't, sadly. And that's why most people, they pick small groups, people that go over different Bible studies, different groups in the church. They'll break apart and they'll have little areas of study. But it is hard when the bigger the group is, different levels of belief. So I can understand that point, but discipling is hindered with the large number. So that's a reason why people are leaving, is to have that closer, small group, personal walk with Jesus, and that's understood. The next one is, grieved me a little bit. This was saying that they attended 5 different churches. And it says the gospel danced around and the congregation was being belittled. Calvinist points being preached. Calvinist is that you're predestined, in a sense. You don't have a choice. That's Calvinism. So this is a sad point when it comes to the non-biblical preaching, and it becomes more of a social place. Biblical, they said it was danced around. Doctrine, it was changed, and sadly to say that some churches, they get a good speaker, not a biblical speaker, but a person that can tell a good story, make people laugh, and sadly, some of the churches are leaning towards that, bringing in different types of music, unbiblical music. Previous pastor called it 7-Eleven music. They say the same 7 words, same 7 words 11 times. So the preaching it's been watered down, and as far as doctrine itself has changed. One of the reasons why I'm so honored to do this, I'm getting choked up because it's sad the way the churches has turned into that, and it's hard for people to find a church. We have somebody in church that goes to ours right now. He drives over an hour just to come to our church because in his area there's no biblical, and it says 5 times for this. So it is disheartening not to have that. But for our church, on our website, sunsetdrivebaptistchurch.com, it has the address at the top. I don't know what area that you're in, but if you're anywhere around Virginia, we love to have you. I can only offer these videos that we have. Our new sermons are on our site. Older sermons are on here. I wish that if I knew where you were, I can see if I could look it up. But again, you have to be careful as far as different churches, because they could say one thing and it could mean a completely different thing. So my heart goes out to you in having to deal with finding that right church. But if you wouldn't mind just coming to our site, you can get some of, as far as biblical sermons, biblical preaching. But my heart goes out that a lot of churches has turned into that. So I guess I end everything with a prayer. My prayer is that we wouldn't allow sin, the first comment. That we would address sin the biblical way. That we could see people that are, in sin or causing others to, fall into sin, that we would address it biblically, 1-on-1, 2-on-3, and then address it to the church. If it's really bad, to address it other ways. The emphasis on these small groups as Jesus Christ did. Discipleship making is good. Preaching the word, be instant in season, out of season, reprove, rebuke, correct with all long suffering. Give doctrines, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. As far as the sin nature, eternal security, any other doctrine that you could put in there, not have it be washed out. So my prayer is that the coming years we would fix the faults that we see currently in our churches, and that we could grow into a biblical church the way that it was intended. And that is what Hebrews says is for, well, I'll read it real quick again. It says, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as in manner of some, but exhorting one another. We should exhort one another in spirit and in truth. So I pray that this video was helpful, and I hope that I addressed any of the concerns. We're going to start something different in other devotions. But again, thank you for taking the time and watching these videos. God bless you, and I hope you have a good day.